So Nephilim, besides being fun to say, I would argue that the most popular versions of the Nephilim lore is that they are the product of angels and humans having sex. And they are one of the reasons that God flooded the earth and Noah had to build an ark. And the word Nephilim has been translated to fallen, those who have fallen, violent ones, those who attack, and giants. And they are mentioned ambiguously in the book of Genesis and Numbers. And according to Wikipedia, a similar identical biblical Hebrew term known as Nephilim by some scholars and the word fallen by others appears in these other books that are in the Deuterocanonical books. And I really just wanted to say Deuterocanonical. Those are a collection of books that are considered to be part of the Old Testament by some churches, including the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. But anyway, so there's a whole bunch of books that a lot of Christian scholars believe they're not part of the King James Version, right? So the book of Enoch, that describes Nephilim as great giants whose heights were 300 cubits, which is the length of a forearm. I don't know whose forearm, but that's what a cubit is. And so 300 of those was how tall that the Nephilim were. And these giants consumed the produce of all the people until the people detested feeding them. So the giants turned against the people in order to eat them. And then they began to sin against birds, wild beasts, reptiles, and fish. And their flesh was devoured the one by the other, and they drank blood. And then the earth brought an accusation against the oppressors. So that doesn't sound really nice.
No, sounds bad.
In the book of Jubilees, that states the idea about God flooding the earth because of them. And in there, they're referred to as evil giants. There are, however, who believe that Nephilim are not the result of angels intermixing with humans, but instead are the descendants of the mixture of the Seth and Cain lines, as the lineage of Seth was called the sons of God because they made a covenant, and the daughters of men were the descendants of Cain or anyone who didn't believe in God.
Oh, like a little bit less literal.
Less giant, more we're talking about descendants from
ancient bloodline as opposed to ancient bloodlines as opposed to
evil giants,
right? Evil giant babies.
Yeah, and there are just those who believe the Bible is literal, and if it says they were giants, and dadgummit, they were giants, and these people have always existed. And in the 1800s, one of these people irritated someone enough that they caused a hoax we're still talking about today, and that's the hoax of the Cardiff Giant. I just wanted to expand on some of the Nephilim lore. So in October of 1869, a farmer named Stub Newell hired some men to dig a well for him on his property in Cardiff, New York, a small town south of Syracuse. Now, Cardiff is on what has been termed the Broad Psychic Highway, and this is a 300-mile stretch of land which during the 1800s had already witnessed the end of the world Millerites, the Shakers, the Fox sisters, and all the spiritualists, not to mention Joseph Smith was there finding his tablets and starting the Mormon church. So the second Great Awakening was there. So all of these people are having revivals. So they're kind of ramped for some good stuff, right? So as these workers are digging for this well, they hit something solid about 3 feet down. And what they end up unearthing was what appeared to be a giant petrified man. Now, because this was the 1800s and there was fuck all to do, people began to gather on the farm to get a look and make their opinions known. Newell erected a tent and charged at first 25 cents, then 50 cents to see the giant man. Hundreds came, and soon there was a food tent, a carriage service, and a cider stand.
There was.
I hope it was hard cider too. Headlines read, "A wonderful discovery, a new wonder, the petrified giant." Guidebooks with the giant's measurements were printed by at least 3 different authentic original sources. Within 3 weeks, they collected over $7,000 in admission fees, and over 32,000 people had come to see this giant. Because it was such a tourist draw, a group of Syracuse businessmen paid Newell $37,000 for a 3/4 interest in the giant. And then they moved it to Syracuse, where then 60,000 people came to see it. P.T. Barnum came and he offered $50,000 for the giant, but he was turned down. So he ended up making his own giant and displayed it in New York City at Wood's Museum, saying that he had the true giant and the one in Cardiff was a fake. And then outside of Barnum's exhibit, the signs were like, what is it? Is it a statue? Is it a petrification? Is it a stupendous fraud? Yes.
It's fraud.
So this inspired one of the Syracuse investors to be quoted as saying, there's a sucker born every minute. And that phrase gets attributed to P.T. Barnum. It was just about him. But so that's where that comes from. So the investors tried to get an injunction against Barnum, but the court said, bring your giant here. And if he swears to his own genuineness as a bona fide petrification, you shall have the injunction you ask for. So basically saying you can't bring your fake giant here to say that this other giant is a fake, So the Cardiff Giant then went on to be displayed in New York a few blocks away from Barnum's giant. And so like a Starbucks, right? So you can go see a giant on one corner and then go see a giant on another corner.
Giants on every corner.
Giants on every corner. From there, it went to Boston, where Ralph Waldo Emerson came to see it, and he said it was beyond his depth, very wonderful and undoubtedly ancient. Oliver Wendell Holmes went and saw it, and he put a hole in the back of its left ear, which is still there. And people thought from the beginning that this was a fraud, right? Although what kind of fraud it was the debate. And it's interesting to note that this was a time where people were trying hard to prove the prehistory of America, the idea that other people besides Native Americans had lived on or visited America before the Europeans came. And this had influenced some of that speculation. But the most popular guess was that it was a sculpture. A science lecturer from Syracuse suggested that French Jesuits carved it to impress the Native Americans. So in reality, it was a sculpture that was made out of gypsum, a soft stone. And this was all the brainchild of a man named George Hull, who confessed to the hoax in December of 1869. So just a couple of months after this had happened. And George, who was a hardcore atheist, had gotten into an argument with a fundamentalist named Reverend Turk, who insisted the Bible was literal and that giants must have existed at some point, and just refused to give up the idea that giants were real. And this irritated Hull so much that he lay awake wondering why people would believe such remarkable stories in the Bible about giants, when I suddenly thought of making a stone giant and passing it off as a petrified man. People were so bored back then. So
it's like a lot of work.
And a lot of
internet's for
wait till you see how much money he spends on this too. So committing to this bit, he bought a 5-ton block of gypsum, and he had to keep lying to people about why he needed it, right? Because he can't say I'm going to do a hoax and make a petrified man. So you'd be like, I'm going to make a statue. It's a monument, and it's also 5 tons, and so it's so heavy it destroyed wagons and bridges on its way to the railroad. It was wearing out all the horses. It finally gets shipped to a sculptor in Chicago who had been sworn to secrecy, and the sculptor and his assistants proceeded to carve a 10-foot man in the likeness of George Hull. So they make it look like the guy that is causing the hoax. And so it's very detailed with nostrils, nails, an Adam's apple, ribs, and a huge veiny penis. Its left leg twists over the right, and some say it looks like he thinks it's holding his stomach in pain, but I really think it looks like it's holding its dick. So when you look at the picture, you'll be like, yeah, I think I know what he's doing here. So Hull applied acid to age the carving, and then also used needles across the surface to imitate the look of skin pores. So basically went across it was like a million times to make it look like it had pores. Originally, he had put hair and beard on it, but he found out that those wouldn't petrify. So he's like, okay, so they had to take that off. So then they had to get the giant, because it was in Chicago, right? So they shipped it to Union via railroad in an iron strap box. Then they brought it secretly from Union, New York to the Newell farm, where it was buried in 1868, all with Stub Newell's knowledge. So curious onlookers who did see, like, because it's a giant. Okay, now it's 3 tons. It's a giant 10-foot man in a box. Like, how the fuck are you hiding? Like, look over here. So some people thought it was a tobacco press. Some said it was casting. Some said it was a soldier's monument. Most thought it was tobacco, which was contraband at the time. So that's why they're like, oh, look over there.
I didn't
right?
see it. Yeah.
Yeah. So in February of 1870, the Chicago Tribune printed an expose, although that didn't deter the public from continuing to go to see the giant, who some called Old Hoaxy. This was the time
That's amazing. Old Hoaxy.
Old Hoaxy.
I like it.
Yeah, this is a time of hoaxes and humbugs. And in Barnum's American Museum, he intermingled real and fake objects and would ask the visitors to determine what the genuine things were. And again, people are really bored and just want to look at stuff. So even if it's fake, it's like it's a fake giant 10-foot man with a big dick. And
they didn't have the internet or television. I mean,
what else were you going to do on your Saturday? Plow your field? Like, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to go look at a giant statue. Yeah. So he would go on to go be exhibited at various fairs and expositions, even after everybody knew like this was not a petrified man. But eventually it would end up as a coffee table in an Iowa man's basement before being sold to the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown, New York, where it is to this day. And the copy is supposedly at a museum in Michigan. And there's a third copy, and I forget where that one's at. But so people got really into making petrified men. George Hull tried to make a second one, and this one had a monkey's tail, but that one did not pass muster and didn't make the same splash that the Cardiff Giant did. Yeah.
Devil's Trap Podcast is a Don't Get It production. Meow.
Devil's Trap Podcast is part of the Ship It Studios podcast network. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Devil's Trap Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at Devil's Trap Podcast, Twitter at Devil's Trap Pod, or you can email us at devilstrap@devilstrappodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe, leave reviews, and share with all your friends. We're at all your favorite podcast outlets and at devilstrappodcast.com. I'm Babe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.